Now we have an opportunity. We have 10 interesting days together where we will meet, we will discuss, and I hope we'll find ways forward. And once again, welcome to 2020 Stockholm Forum.
The COVID-19 pandemic has plunged the world into an unprecedented crisis with devastating consequences for people, economies, and progress towards the Sustainable Development Goals.
In 2020, you really cannot ignore the pandemic. At the same time, the pandemic is not by any means the only thing that's happening. So as an institute which focuses on some of the big challenges of peace and security in the world, and working with our co-host, the Swedish Ministry of Foreign Affairs, it was really quite straightforward to think that what we need to focus on now is the particular challenges of sustaining peace in the COVID-shaped world as that begins to unfold.
Even before COVID, when we began planning the forum before the pandemic, the dynamics of opportunity and risk related to conflict were changing beneath our feet.
The pandemic underscores that international institutions focused on crisis response are really challenged by a world in which global risks and threats are directly affecting national security, governance, and international cooperation.
Diplomacy cannot be put in quarantine. And the discussion on security, peace, and development is even more important today than yesterday.
What we're seeing is not only a social and economic crisis built upon many, many other crises in different countries, but we're also seeing a very worrying regression from the fundamental norms that underpinned the 21st century approach to human rights.
For many, many people affected by COVID around the world, COVID is just one more risk that people and countries are adding to a long list that they are managing. It has not replaced issues, it has compounded them with pre-existing issues such as inequality.
I think the major problem we're dealing with today is that we have a number of countries who have very different interpretations of the basic principles on which the Charter is based. And I think that there's going to be a need for them to come to terms with that and come together. And without that, I don't think there's going to be a smooth way forward.
What I think we will definitely have to do better is a few things. We will have to be a lot more evidence-based so that our impact is more demonstrable.
It's about trying to make sure that we have a proper understanding of the root cause of fragility. So the proper analysis at the country level, it's not from Washington, it's really at the country level, at the local level, about what's going on and how we can come from a development perspective, bring our added value.
If what you want is peace, you need to get everybody's energy engaged in that. But at the same time, in order for that to happen, gender relations also have to develop and adjust towards a basis of greater equality and greater fairness. And this also leads to greater balance and fairness between those of different ages and potentially with other marginalized groups as well.
My call is really, and this is my strong belief, that we should do everything to end this cycle of exclusion.
Way back, making peace was only with the warring parties. Now we understand that peace is about involving women, communities, local actors, youth.
We've seen when there are opportunities for inclusion, women rise to the occasion. Their unique influence within the community has a transformational potential beyond just top-down hard military approaches alone.
Peace processes needs to be more inclusive, and I think one key element of this is to be a better listener. Because we know on the ground, and especially among informal networks of girls and women, we know the roots of conflict, we know conflict dynamic.
All our environmental problems are also social and governance issues, because it's a question of what our relationship is to the natural environment and how we manage that. So that brings in the whole question of the relationship between climate change and managing the environment on the one hand, and sustaining peace.
This pandemic will not last forever. The other two major crises, the world is facing. Climate change and loss of biodiversity will not be over for a few years.
My first message is for the peace and security community. They will not bring peace and security if they cannot stop climate change.
Within the African continent, I think the most crucial thing we have to be able to do is to democratize this idea of climate change, make it real and relevant in the lives of people.
We should learn from the COVID crisis that science is important, that facts matter, and that if you don't prepare in advance, when the crisis hits you, the challenge is that you are going to have a great deal of difficulty in being able to cope with it.
Human security is not only about military security, but it is really about making sure that we avoid climate change effects that will actually lead to social unrest and in the end can lead to armed conflicts as well.
There has to be working together. Whether you're thinking about resilience in the community, in a country, or at the global level, we need more cooperation.
Obviously, the world has no deficit of challenges, and the pandemic that we're facing now is one of them. But we need not to lose sight of the other critical challenges that we were focusing on not that many months ago.
Pre-existing divisions has to some degree been deepened. If you were a nationalist before this crisis, you are probably an even more convinced nationalist now. If you believed in multilateralism and cooperation before this crisis, you are even more convinced. And so I think there is still a challenge.
It lays bare the consequences of inequality. It lays bare the consequences of the inadequate reach of some of our healthcare and social safety net systems. It lays bare the stressors on the humanitarian and fragility response systems.
From the consequences of this crisis, we're going to have to invest. We're going to have to find ways of building back better.
There can be some openings. There can be, for example, an insight to some people that multilateralism is needed.
We need to collectively really be as creative and as an imaginative as we've ever been, and to try to push through some of the institutional barriers. So this is that time. You know, we've been talking about this for a while, and now is the urgent moment to act.
We've learned that we can engage. We learned that people want to engage. They want to continue these important conversations.
It's the possibility of a wider generational collaboration that could be based on experience sharing, on dialogue, on trust, and really allowing young people to thrive in their leadership potential without fear and exclusion.
Today is the time to work together and to find common solutions to common problems. And not least, to realize that good international solutions are in our national interests.
The virus doesn't touch one group and not another. Everybody is impacted. Everybody in every community, everybody in every country, everybody across the world.
There are two keys to building resilience. One is knowledge. The other key is cooperation. There is not a single one of these problems that we talk about at the forum that can be solved by one group, one government acting alone.